So I'll start by calling to order the regular council meeting of June 8th, 2020. And I'd like to note before we get started, for those who are new to this technology, that the procedure will be, I will ask council for feedback after each presentation, and then I will ask residents after council has had a chance to provide feedback. In order to put your name on the list to get an order for providing feedback, asking questions or otherwise, if you move your mouse, you will see a toolbar pop up somewhere on your screen and it says participants on it. And if you click on the participants, it'll open a window, and at the bottom of that window, it will say hand up. So that's how you need to be able to communicate that you've got a question or would like to provide a comment. Okay. All right. So let's start with an approval of the agenda, and there is a request to amend the agenda by removing 8.7. So can I get someone to move to approve the agenda with this amendment, please? Moved by Carolina, seconded by Bruce, and I think probably can just vote on that. So with that moved and seconded, Lorna, can we go straight to the approval of the agenda with that, or do we have to pass that motion first?
No, you may. You just need to vote on that, Your Worship.
All right, so let's vote on amending the agenda, please. All in favor? All right, and Lisa is missing her internet connection, so we will go ahead with approved. And then can I get, with the amended agenda, can I get someone to move the amended agenda, please?
Oh, it's been moved, Your Worship.
Okay, so then we just, so are we covered on the agenda item in its entirety already?
Yes, it is. I have that it was amended and approved as amended, Your Worship.
Great, thank you. All right, so then let's move to the adoption of the minutes. Can I get someone to move the item? Can I get someone to move the item? Moved by Rob. Seconded by Carolina. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, motion carried. We have no delegations. So for 5.1, Lorna, if you can outline the report, please.
Yes, Your Worship. Council passed a motion at the May 25th council meeting requesting that amendments be made to the fees and charges bylaw to increase fines. And the attached bylaw that is there for your information, fines have been increased substantially, and we did keep them in line with what Lions Bay is doing. And we feel that these increased fines will help discourage the illegal parking that's been taking place in the village. And at the same time, new signs are also being posted. So the bylaw is available for you for first 3 readings.
Thank you. Can I get someone to move the item?
So moved.
Moved by Bruce. Can we get someone to second it, please?
I'll second.
Thanks, Rob. It's a little bit more more delay there than we probably need to between the moving and the seconding. Any discussion at all on this item?
You need Lisa to call. That's the problem.
Well, in the meantime, I have a question, if I may.
It's really hard to hear you.
Your sound is very strange.
Maybe I should put, is that better?
No.
Really? What about now?
There's a huge echo.
Yeah. We can, I think we can hear you, but it's not normal.
How is it now?
It
No.
sounds like you've got 2 microphones
Yeah,
on.
do you have a second computer going close by?
No, I don't. That's strange. But I am using my husband's computer because mine just broke this morning. So I
Why
don't
don't you
know.
try and
Maybe
go
I can.
ahead with your question?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna lower the volume to see if it helps, if that's okay. Okay, so my question is on line 21, where it says vehicle wheels on the highway. I didn't realize that that was a fine that is more expensive than our usual fines for that. Was it always like that, or this is something new that was added here?
No, it was always higher, and that's actually a Motor Vehicle Act requirement.
Okay. Okay. I do have a concern. I do think we should raise the fees like we're raising, you know, to discourage people from parking here. But if a resident gets ticketed, it means that that is the amount they would pay as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a way for us to write this for this to be cheaper for residents?
Illegal parking and breaking the Motor Vehicles Act is standard. There's no way to have preference over someone breaking the law over another.
Okay, yeah, I'm just concerned because it is, when we're talking about a person that doesn't live here, that's one thing, but when we're talking about people that live here and getting fined for $100 for the residents in the home, so that concerns me a little bit. But yeah, those are my comments for now, that there's nothing that can be done.
Yeah, your worship, we're working with residents to encourage them to come in and get decals and parking pass, guest passes, and we would always take that into consideration, you know, the first time around, for sure.
Okay, thank you, Lana.
Any other questions from council? No. I see one question from Deborah Struck. Go ahead, please, Deborah.
Okay, my concern, I'm hoping I'm looking at the right thing. There's 2 pages here with a bunch of line items for bylaw number 5.
Yes.
My concern is to do with residents being penalized, because there's a lot of things here that could likely affect residents.
Deborah, did you just hear Lorna's response to Carolina?
She said that there would be a warning the first time.
Well, education and leniency, obviously, because the intent here is not to be punishing residents. But if residents continue to decide to break the law for parking or the Motor Vehicles Act, then yeah, unfortunately, we can't carve out a separate pricing structure for them.
Well, because over the years I've seen things change drastically to do with how residents are allowed to park in the village, and I think that I don't know. I'm just very, very concerned, and I've heard from other residents, and it might be that, okay, fine and dandy, some of these come from other jurisdictions and whatnot, but we are a village, and I think we cannot forget that we're a village. And of course, being double parked can be a problem or whatever, but there's still areas where parking has been taken away from residents, and residents are being penalized, and that should not be happening.
Lorna, can you comment on maybe the ratio of resident parking infractions to all other parking infractions off the top of your head?
Oh, your worship, resident parking infractions are very low. As I stated, we're working hard with residents to ensure they have the decals and guest passes. And actually with the new signs going up, and it'll only be resident parking with permits or no parking. Those are the only 2 signs we're going to have. There will be ample parking for residents in the village, your worship.
I'm under the impression that this doesn't change. We're not removing any parking with this bylaw change. We're just making it resident only, correct?
That's correct.
So we're not changing any availability parking. If anything, we're adding available parking for residents with this.
Yes, restricting it to them.
Correct.
Use. Mm-hmm.
Lisa?
I think it's defined as permit parking, not resident only parking, because there's guests of residents.
That's what it means. Sorry if I use the old wording.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Seeing nothing else, all in favor?
All right.
None opposed? Motion carried. Lauren, if we can move to 5.2, please.
Yes, your worship, as you're aware, on June 30th, the port is lifting the moratorium on recreational docks, except for in Belcarra on Marine Avenue, and St. Clair Road. We've been very fortunate to be receiving a $10,000 grant from the port to assist us in doing an OCP review on the section of the Bedwell Bay Sustainability Plan and the Official Community Plan, And so we may speed up that process and have the moratorium lifted on Marine Avenue and St. Clair Road. And so this motion is for council approval for me to go ahead and work with Richard White and Chris Boyd, who will assist in reviewing the OCP and the Bedwell Bay Sustainability Plan. And so we will be able to complete that work and lift the moratorium in that area.
Thank you. Can I get someone to move the item, please?
Moved, Carolina moved.
Moved by Carolina, seconded by Bruce. And Lisa, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. There's just one slight correction on the report, on 5.2 report at the very bottom of page 1. Under the parameters where it says proposed official community plan review, the first paragraph, the last sentence, and the last line, last full line, it says properties directly border Bedwell Bay. That should say Belpara Bay.
That's correct, Your Worship. And we've actually corrected the report that's online this afternoon. So thank you for that, Councillor Wilder.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. No other comments? All in favor?
Hang on, Neil.
Oh, I don't know. This is
You already called it.
unprecedented here, Rob. Okay, go ahead.
My question is, I've got a couple of questions on what are we actually reviewing? What are the parameters? This is a lot of preamble beforehand, after, and what I can see that we're actually going to review is the bylaws, policies, and procedures. Is that correct? Is that what this grant is for?
No, Your Worship, it is for reviewing section 3.2 of the official community plan that hasn't been updated since the official community plan was adopted. And there are some items in there that need to be reviewed and brought back to council, and reviewing the Bedwell Bay Sustainability Plan, because things have perhaps changed and some wording may need to be changed since that was adopted.
Okay, so then this review of bylaws, policies, and procedures is not what we're going to be doing then? The applications, et cetera, for docs?
We will
Is
be
that correct?
on the application and those other forms while we do the review. The OCP is a bylaw.
I understand that. I understand that. So are we, what I'm getting at here, Lorna, is are we reviewing our procedures that are going to follow from this review? So for instance, paperwork, streamlining the process, making the process very clear. I've been asked this by other people, that's why I'm asking the question. Is that going to be a part of this review? So we will come out with a new procedure on applications in Bedwell Bay, regardless of what kind of doc it might be.
Yes, there are two different things. One, I'm looking at a review of the OCP, as I stated, with Richard White and Chris Boyd. And in the meantime, in the office, we will be updating all of the forms, the applications and everything. Yes, we will be at the same time.
All right, thank you. Just to clarify that, thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Carolina?
Yes, thank you. Lorna, why are we engaging 2 consultants instead of 1?
Well, because with the highway encroachment area on Marine Avenue, we need some engineering work. We need some calculations done, because you can't just establish a highway encroachment area without understanding the parameters of where the highway encroachment fence will go, the ramp, and all those types of things that go along with it. So you need some engineering help too.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is John. John, can you state your full name, please?
Thank you. It's Josh Ristani.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Your Worship.
It's John Shulistani.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I wondered if residences can give input during the OCP process.
Yes, when the bylaws brought back to council, absolutely.
So during this $10,000 fund we receive, are we going to receive input from residences during this process?
I think she just answered your question, John.
So we are going to make suggestion to how OCP is going to get amended?
It's a public engagement. It is public engagement built into the review. So yes.
Thank you. And what I understand is that, is it going to be implemented via 2 council meetings?
As many as required, but there's a minimum of 2 council meetings for any bylaw to be passed. That's standard policy.
Thank you.
Jim Chisholm,
Can you hear me?
we got you. Sherry. Oh wait, you were just muted. Now you're back.
Now I'm back. Okay. I noticed that the date, June the 30th was mentioned. Is that when Bedwell Bay can make application for docks? Because I believe Belcarra Bay is the 15th of June.
Lorna, would you like to answer?
The port has lifted the moratorium as of June 15th, and that is for Belcarra Bay.
But the one for Bedwell Bay has not been lifted?
No, it has not. That's what the review is for.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing nothing else, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carried. 5.3, please. Lorna.
Yes, Your Worship. The Municipal Insurance Association of BC requires council to appoint a voting delegate, and you have been chosen to be the voting delegate at their AGM.
That's too bad. I mean, that's great. So nice and simple. Can I get someone to move the item?
So moved.
Thanks,
Second.
Bruce. Second by
Second by Carolina.
Carolina. Any discussion?
What representative to what?
Oh, just the insurance bureau.
Oh,
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carried. That's unfortunate. That's great. Reports from mayor and council committee representatives. The only thing that I've got as an update is that staff have begun working with the Fire Underwriter Survey to begin a proper audit of our water system. Lauren, do you have anything else you can add beyond that, or is it just still early stages?
Still early stages, Your Worship, but thank you for that.
Okay, thanks. That's it for me. Anyone else from council have any updates or reports? Carolina?
Thank you. Just a question, if I may. Do you need a council motion to do the audit of the water? I would think so.
Lorna?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Your Worship.
Do we need an audit? Do we need a council motion to have an audit done of the water system?
I don't understand the question, I guess, Your Worship.
So just Carolina, so you're clear, there's planning going on now. There's no budget approved. And you're asking if we need to have a motion and a vote on whether or not the planning can proceed?
Yes, because I understand it's going to come at a cost. So I guess perhaps maybe once they figure out the cost, then that's when the motion is going to come forward.
Yeah, we can't approve the cost till we know more, or we know more about the process as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Your Worship, we have 2 notices of motion from Councillor Drake that are on the agenda.
All right. So let's move to that. Councillor Drake, why don't you outline at least your first one?
Yes, so first has to do with sprinkler installations. I mentioned it in the last council meeting, and council has the resolution in front of him. The objective here is to ensure that those who install sprinkler systems at the moment face no additional costs for having done that. And I do appreciate that in some cases there is a cost to us, i.e. we do inspections on these, but I think it's a minor contribution and that we should do it given the overall village benefits that flow from installations of sprinkler systems.
All
Your
right.
Worship, if you like, I have a few statistics I could give you.
Please, Lorna.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I talked to the building inspector, and from 2017 to present, there have been 11 single-family dwellings applications, building applications, and 9 of the 11 had sprinklers installed. And also there were 2 for coach houses, and the 2 coach houses also had sprinklers involved. So there were just 2 that did not. And it's approximately $300 to $400 in a building, in a building permit application for sprinklers. And the reason that number varies is it depends on how many sprinkler heads there were in the house. So that's just a little bit of information for your worship.
Thank you, Lauren. If I could ask, so then, I'm sorry, that's a total, I'm surprised at the numbers and very gratified to hear them. But so we've had a total of 11, I'm sorry, over how many years?
Since 2017.
2017. So for the sake of argument, let's say 3 years.
3 years.
So about 4. So the cost to us, roughly, if we assume 400 per site, for that would have been $1,600 per year.
Correct.
Roughly. Okay. I mean, I appreciate that it is costing us some dollars, but I think anything we can do to encourage the installation of sprinklers, we should do.
Carolina?
Thank you. Lorna, any major, so those numbers that you gave us, it's new build applications, right? Was there any major renovations that sprinklers were installed?
If there were, that would have been included in that number, in those numbers.
Oh, so we would be included on the new build numbers. Okay, thank you.
David S. David, can you tell us your last name, please?
My last name is David Sholostani. I have a quick question. I was wondering if you guys had calculated the capacity required to ensure that, let's say, every house in Belterra decides to install sprinklers, if our water supply can meet the capacity requirements.
I can respond to that, Neil.
Sorry, yeah, I mean, I can offer a little bit. So first off is the intent with the sprinklers is to stop a fire at origin in advance of it being able to get outside of a house and become an interface fire. So in what would be, I would think most cases, we would have only one house have the sprinkler happen at a time. You would have to have every house on fire in the village at the same time to require enough fire flow to be able to manage sprinklers inside the house all running concurrently. So that by itself is an extremely low risk, and it's already too late for the water system to have to be worried about. I will say that the fire department has requested we do not promote outdoor sprinkler systems for the sake of protecting against forest fires, because our system cannot handle people worried about a forest fire using water to protect a house where we could have instead used that water to actually put the fire out at the house that was actually on fire. So outside sprinklers, high risk, inside sprinklers, low risk. And sorry, Bruce, did you say you wanted to add anything?
I think you've covered it nicely. Yeah, I fully agree. Once we had every house in the village on fire, our water supply would be the least of our concerns. I think it's a valid question, but I think the other point, and it's probably inherent in your comments, is that when sprinkler systems do go off, they use relatively little water to suppress the fire.
All right, Jim Chisholm. Jim?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We got you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, Lorna, was the service entrance fee included in those fees?
Yes, I believe so.
Because isn't that $700 a connection now?
Yes, it is. But this is for people just installing their sprinklers.
That's fine. Yes, but you get a service fee if they're not hooked up. I
Correct.
presume that'll be zero also, will it not?
Yes, it will. Mhm.
Okay, I just want to make that.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, just to be clear, Jim, if I might, that would apply, of course, when someone was not using municipal water, but did want to provide a sprinkler capability.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I think that's probably a very small set, particularly since we require the sprinklers on with new owners.
Yeah.
All right. So Seeing no other hands, all in favor on the notice of motion from
I'm
Bruce?
sorry, your worship, we need a mover and a seconder.
Oh, I'll move.
I'll
Thanks, Bruce.
second. Carolina second.
Carolina seconds. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carried.
Thank
And
you.
then Bruce, if you'd like to outline your second notice of motion.
Yeah, this had to, for those that aren't familiar with it, we had, as a result of a recommendation from the Water Committee, proposed to introduce a requirement that sprinklers be installed in new homes and with major renovations in homes. The logic here being, as any of you who have followed the discussion around fire suppression, that this is a very, very effective way to reduce our risk of fires and take pressure off both our fire department, but as well our water supply, whatever that may end up being. And but the province has put a hold on these requirements for sprinkler systems, and thus they turned down our request. And this motion suggests that we're in a unique situation to make a case that we should be treated as an exception, allowed to require sprinkler systems in these cases, and recognizing that the province is working on a revised approach, committing ourselves to aligning ourselves with that whenever they do implement it. I think I personally think this is probably a bit of a long shot, but I frankly think it's worth the effort given how important this is for us in Belcarra.
Thanks, Bruce. Can I get someone to move the item?
Also move.
Okay, moved by Lisa,
Second.
second by Carolina. And Rob, you got your hand up.
Yeah, question I've got is, something changed since the Water Committee made the recommendations? I believe at the time that the Water Committee made the recommendations, they cited mitigating circumstances at that time because of our water flow problems.
Yeah.
So has something changed now that we think that the provincial government is going to look favorably at this time when they didn't the last time around? Did we actually go to the provincial government and get turned down?
Yeah, my understanding is we did. I'm sorry, I'll let Lorna respond to that.
Yes, your worship, we did. Mhm.
So has something changed? Is my question, I guess, because our circumstances haven't changed.
Well, we do have an engineering, to support Bruce's point, we do have now a formal engineering report showing that our system's insufficient for fire flow.
So we didn't have that report the last time then, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, that's only a month old.
that would be a change then.
Yep.
Yeah, if I might, I'd also add, Rob, I don't know what specifically we provided, because you may recall at council, we simply approved the recommendation and then basically were told that the province didn't agree with us doing that. So I don't know how much of a case we made for ourselves in the submission. Their response is probably an automatic to any municipality that proposes to require this. So I'm guessing that, fine tuning the submission, as somebody who was on the receiving end of this sort of thing in my career, you can make a case for an exception, and as long as you lay it out well, who knows? I think it's a long shot, but it's worth the effort.
Well, I think this council's probably behind that recommendation. Doesn't appear to me that the last council was. That could be a major change as well.
Possibly. In fairness to the last council, it basically took the advice of its then Public Works and the fire chief, who said you can't do it because the province won't allow you to, which appeared to have been correct now. That didn't mean we couldn't make the case. I mean, Jim can tell you he's been promoting this one for about a decade.
Okay, well, Jim's second in line. Ben Shulistani's first. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. I would just a follow up to what Jim Chisholm raised regarding the sprinkler system. Did I hear it correctly that the village is waiving the water connection fee, the $750, if people connect their property to connected to their property to the municipal water because of the sprinkler system? Did I hear that correctly?
No, no. What we passed was that there are no additional costs to bring sprinklers on board in a house, but that does not affect any of the other standard fees.
So can you remain on well water and add municipal water just for the sprinkler system?
Yeah, we covered this in the last motion, so yes.
So that was my earlier question. So am I correct to assume that if you are staying on well water, you can connect to the municipal water by making an application?
No, you cannot. Nothing changes with these motions except that there are no additional fees associated with putting sprinklers in a house.
So sorry, I'm a bit confused. So okay, so let's say, so in Jim Chisholm's case, assuming like, so that property is on well water, so if they want to connect a sprinkler system in their house, they can connect to municipal water without paying any fees?
Lorna, I would assume that, Lorna, I can't answer that. Do you know more?
Yes, that is true. But that is strictly for a sprinkler system. And actually, we shouldn't be having this discussion, Your Worship.
Okay, we'll move on. Jim, go ahead. Jim Chisholm, you're up.
Okay. One thing, Bruce, you may relay the fact that talk about the committee that was struck in the past about the water sprinkler system that was done, Bruce, because that puts us back into, if you want to apply, you may discuss that part.
Yeah.
I have a copy of it. You may want to just say what you want to say about it.
Maybe you have to jog my memory, Jim. I'm thinking in terms of an appeal to the province, and
yes, but that was the committee that was struck from various people. I think there were 7 or 8 people from North Vancouver and Delta and so forth.
Oh, yes, okay.
They struck a committee to decide how to do it.
Thank you, Jim.
That was going to make the municipalities and other portions of people in the province that could apply now.
Yes, and recommending it. My reading of it, and sorry, I may have missed something. My reading of it was that the end result of that was that everything was put on hold. They were looking at the fact that some municipalities did in fact have these requirements, and the committee wasn't in favor of allowing more of them. And it was kind of, I thought it was kind of odd logic, but they had a logic that basically suggested by putting sprinklers in, people might underdevelop their capacity to fight fires.
Well, I appreciate that, but the way I read that report, I think you can still apply, as you say.
Your Worship, when the village applied previously to the province for this amendment or exception, we were advised that we couldn't have our own bylaw because none of the municipalities in the province that didn't have this bylaw in place, I think prior to 2017, that they weren't being allowed because the province was doing a review because they wanted to have a standard all across the province. However, when they replied to that request, they did say that you could ask for an exception. And I believe that's what Councillor Drake is doing at this time.
I think you're correct there, because it was 37 people, I think, had already got the service in.
Interestingly, yeah, you raise an interesting point. It probably comes back as well, links back to Rob's earlier comment about the last council. Yeah. Frankly, I was surprised at the date 2017 in that summary you're giving, because well before that, I know you had pressed for this and been told the province wouldn't allow it.
I notice Stuart's got his hand up. Stuart, can you add to this? Stuart Novak.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to give a little bit more detail about the background about the sprinkler bylaws. I don't know anything about the history of Belcarre, obviously, but up until 2004, municipalities were introducing bylaws for enforcing sprinkler systems in new housing. And at that time, in 2004, they passed and amended an act that would say that no municipality can do any installations or regulate beyond the BC Building Code. And so from that time on, up until 2017, the municipalities that already had the sprinkler system bylaws were allowed to continue and keep their bylaws. And then when 2017 came around, they opened up a window, the province did, and said, any municipality that wants to opt in to a sprinkler bylaw could do so up until December of 2017. So it was about a 3-month to maybe 5-month window where you could actually opt into to create a bylaw that would be accepted. And then that window was closed January 2018. And now they're, as you were stating, the process is a little bit on hold, but they're actually working towards bringing in the language into the BC Building Code.
Thanks, Stuart.
Yeah,
All right. So see, Bruce, you want to have another?
Yeah, I just appreciate those comments from Stuart. So that sounds like, Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, we were unlikely to have succeeded had we tried up till 2017. So it's a little different than what I suggested, but you're saying we did have a window of some months during part of 2017 where we probably could have made an application.
Yes, that's correct. But I just want to add, my opinion in this point. I would say that probably if you were to approach the province right now, the timing is probably pretty good for you to put a business case like this forward. I think that it may be considered anyways.
Yeah.
Carolina.
I'm sure Lorna will do a good job putting it together. I'd just like to suggest that I'd be happy to look at a draft, and it would be wise to engage Stuart as well. As I say, not in this context, but in other contexts, I've looked at this sort of appeal many times, and I'm quite happy to help shape the wording of the appeal.
Oh, for sure. And I would prepare a letter for the mayor's signature, but I'd be pleased to show it to you. Sure.
Certainly. Yeah, and getting advice from qualified people such as Stuart would
Absolutely
be valuable to us.
Carolina.
Thank you. Lorna, if I remember correctly, when this council approved for you to go ahead and talk to the province to approve this, one of the answers from them, according to you back then, it was that in 2 years, they would change the regulations and allow municipalities to go ahead with their bylaws about sprinklers. Do you remember that information? I just wanted to confirm that if that's correct.
The latest information I have is that there was a group together. They brought some information forward to the province, and then it was shelved. And there was another group put together, and then for whatever reason, that their input was shelved too. So I think it's a little bit in limbo right now, and probably writing a letter is a good idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just remember that back then you said, oh, in 2 years, apparently 2 years from now, they will be doing that. Yeah, just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Hey, John Shulastani, go ahead.
Thank you. My question is why the village does not require all residents of Belcarra to connect to municipal water if they can?
It's not a bylaw to force everybody.
So my question is, why don't we have a bylaw to enforce?
Council hasn't decided that a bylaw needed to be publicly considered at this point.
Is it because of lack of water or something else?
No, it's just a policy. When the system was put in originally, there was a promise, I understand, that no one would be forced to connect. And then that promise was broken, and major renos and new houses were then being forced to connect. And we are not entertaining a further change of what that original promise was supposed to be.
So why those who come to Belcarra new, they are forced to connect?
Your worship, that
that's-
discussion
yeah.
is really outside of
Yeah.
this motion.
That's not appropriate for right now, John, I'm sorry. And, but the history is widely available.
Thank you. I leave it for the end of the session.
Well, we won't have well, okay, we'll address it later. Deborah Struck.
I just wanted to kind of go along with what you were saying, that yes, when there was a lot of dialogue, and for people who are new to the village, had no idea that there were many of us who are on wells that like our wells and did not want to have to go onto the municipal system. And most of us also paid our $18,000 up front. And so we're really thankful that there is not a bylaw forcing us to go on the water.
Thanks, Deb. David Chulistani.
Yes, I have a quick question. I was wondering, what is the more or less the capacity for the village of how many new buildings can be connected to the municipal water line to ensure that we still have enough flow for meeting the requirements?
The system was built for potable water to every single house.
But the current situation where it was stated that we have problems with the flow, is that not at all a concern about the fire department?
Not related to hooking the houses up, no. The max flow for all houses is taken into consideration. I believe it's 14 liters is what the fire underwriter survey deemed as domestic use in the calculations, 14 liters per second.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing nothing else, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Let the letter writing begin, approved.
Good one.
All right, so we have two bylaws for adoption. For 7.1, Lorna, do you want to outline this?
Yes, your worship, this is the amendment to the 5-year financial plan that council requested. It removes the fire hall from the 2022 budget.
Can I get someone to move the item?
So moved.
Bruce?
Second.
Carolina?
Second by Carol.
Discussion? No discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are you opposed or are you in favor, Rob?
I'm opposed.
Okay, you can record both those and it passes. 7.2, Lorna.
Yes, your worship, this is the amendment to the fees and charges bylaw for the addition of a special public events permit.
Thank you. Can I get someone to move the item?
So moved.
Bruce moves, seconded by Carolina.
Yes.
Any discussion? For those who are just joining us, we debated these things in length in the last council meeting, both this and the prior bylaw, so that's why you see things moving more quickly. I see no hands. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, unopposed, motion carried. So we have 6 pieces of correspondence. Can I get someone to move to receive these items, please?
So moved.
Lisa moves,
Second.
second by Rob. Any discussion? Carolina, are you thinking or are you putting your hand up buying time?
No, I was looking, oh no, sorry, I got confused. We still have 8.2. That's what I was looking for.
Okay, all right. So we have a comment from John Chulistani. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. I wonder what the village council going to do with respect to these items received, because I understand that at least one of them is requesting an action from the council.
If you're asking about the one that was already, if you're asking about the bylaw, sorry, the correspondence that was already removed at the beginning of the meeting, you might be late to the show, but 8.7 was removed by council at the beginning of the meeting.
And would you please update me on why it was removed?
Because the request of the writer asked to have it removed.
As to have it removed from the public agenda or from the whole agenda?
They're the same thing. Once an agenda is public, it's public. And so we had to vote to remove it and modify and amend the agenda.
I understand that. But the bylaw online, it still shows the letter.
That's because we had to vote to remove it in this meeting, so it'll be removed after the fact.
Understand. So the applicant can submit the letter again for a future bylaw, I believe, for future OCP amendment.
There can be a submission to council for anything anyone wants anytime.
Thank you.
All right. So on the correspondence, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carried. And then 8.1, regarding the Tri-Cities Grad 2020 celebrations, can I get someone to move the item?
So moved.
Carolina?
Second.
Second by Lisa, thank you. Discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carried. The second action item regarding the Tri-Cities Statement Against Racism, can I get someone to move the item, please?
Carolina moves. Or
Carolina
second.
moved. Bruce seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carried. Is there anything rising out of the information items that council would like to discuss? All right, new business. Any council members have any new business to discuss?
Aye.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you, Neil. I wanted to give yet another notice of motion for council. I believe that I had sent it just a few minutes ago through to Paula. I don't know if she has it, but for the sake of the minutes of the meeting, it has
Yes,
to
we
do.
have it, your worship.
You have it. Good. Thank you. I will read it to council, but it's as usual a bit wordy in my case, so I wanted to make sure the wording was in the hands of staff. This has to do with a concern that a number of people have raised with respect to item 7.1, which was the change of the financial plan. And the concern that someone had that by removing the fire hall from that plan, that we would not be in a position to plan for it or to consider the requirement for it. And so I've got a motion that I'd like to put forward that confirms that we do have to pay attention to that and be conscious of that.
So just a quick
Yep.
two things. First off, it'd be really nice if you could put these in ahead of time, especially if they're wordy. That's
Yeah.
I hear the same problems happening at other council meetings and and board meetings. So when you can. The second thing is, Lorna, because Bruce voted against this, is he able to make a notice of motion?
Voted against.
You voted to remove the fire hall. So is he able to actually provide a notice of motion to?
No, I'm not trying to bring it back, Neil. Maybe I should read the notice of motion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different, yeah.
Okay.
And Lorna has it, just to confirm, Neil. Lorna already had the wording. He did.
That's
send it
okay,
to
though, I just got
But
it too, so.
Yeah, I just finished it not that long ago because it was reading through this that I was reminded of it. And yeah, I agree. I'll try to get these things in earlier because council obviously should have a chance to have a look at them. Although you've got an entire 2 weeks, right, prior to our next council meeting. This is just a notice of a motion that I will discuss at the next meeting. So the wording I'm proposing of sending is, whereas the villages of Belcour and Anmore are the sole participants in MVRD's Sasamat Volunteer Fire Department, with each village providing 3 of its 7-person board of trustees to serve with an appointed non-village chair. And whereas the SVFD trustees will be considering the need for significant investments in its fire halls in each community within the next few years, be it resolved that Belcarra needs to keep these anticipated costs in mind in any decisions related to the village's financial position. Full stop. And my point again, Neil, being that, as far as I'm concerned, removing that from our village 5-year plan is a technicality. At no point is it my intention to try to avoid the reality that we probably face a significant cost there. And I just think this ensures that we are recognizing that we will likely face that cost and we should be conscious of it.
Okay, I guess I'm fine, we'll vote on, but I'm at a loss as to if we're not allowed to plan for it because we removed it from the plan, and putting a notice of motion that we should keep it in mind, but not be able to plan for it seems like a lot of talk for not a lot of walk.
Not really, because if you look at the plan, I don't think we modified our expectation of income, did we?
Well, it was directly related to where the income was going to come from in the planning of the sale of road ends or other sources for income.
And did we modify our projections of income from what the plan was previously?
No, we hadn't started the planning yet. So that was when we approved it, only at that time were we able to start the planning, and it was voted down, I believe, 2 weeks after we approved it.
Yeah, well, I consider that we do need to bear that in mind, but I also accept that the advice that we received from a number of letter writers that it didn't belong in our village plan at this point was valid. It's, again, in my mind, that's a technicality. It doesn't modify or change our responsibilities, nor in fact the importance that we pay attention to what these costs were, or indeed plan to be prepared to deal with them.
Well, you obviously have Rob and I agreeing that we should be planning for it. So what I would encourage you to think of for the next time that we're going to debate it is put something concrete about planning as opposed to keeping it in mind, because keeping it in mind is not a planning tool. So think about what you would like to see as a keeping it in mind tool that we can start to think about what kind of action we can have associated with that.
Yeah, I'll take that advice, and we can discuss it at the next meeting as well when this motion comes up. My problem with being more specific, though, is the degree of ambiguity around cost, right, and timing.
Okay, so I'm assuming we need to move this motion. Can I get a mover?
No, Your Worship, it's a notice of motion.
It's
so
just
it'll be
advice.
brought back to the next council meeting.
All right, so there's no voting, nothing. We're good to go.
That's right.
Awesome. All right. We are into. Well, we have one other thing we could chat about. Does anybody want to consider modifying our policy for review of the legal opinions? I'd be happy to propose a motion of reconsideration, because I don't think people understand what the policy was before. I'm getting feedback that people thought that the policy automatically blanket approved or disapproved of all of the different legal opinions that the village has. And in the effort of transparency, the policy that I think we should reconsider so that people understand it clearly was simply that we would consider the legal opinions when they came in as a policy, period. And so we can do it in private, and we would be mandated to review every legal opinion with the guidelines recommended by the lawyer to ensure there was no risk to the village. And as a result, at least every legal opinion as a policy would be considered in advance of being released. So it wasn't a blanket policy. There was no risk associated with it. It was simply a policy that we would consider the release of the summaries or the formal opinions. So with that, I want to put it out there. I'll put out a motion for reconsideration to see, with that better understanding of the policy being simply to review, would anybody like to move that?
Your Worship, this was enclosed, but because it's policy, it would be okay to bring it up now. But yourself and Councillor Begg were the only two who could move a motion of reconsideration.
Great.
It should possibly be moved by Councillor Begg if he's in agreement with that.
So just
Council is allowed to bring it back.
Just to clarify, Neil, then this is simply that if a legal opinion, the council would review the legal opinion, the full legal opinion, and decide what would happen with it at that time as a council.
This motion for reconsideration, just for clarification, Councillor Begg, is just for reconsideration, and then at the next council meeting, it would come up for discussion.
Sure, I'll move that.
Okay.
Would anybody like to second?
It would have to be yourself, Your
I
Worship.
think it's you, Neil.
I'm seconding. I finally get a chance to have a vote.
I will allow it.
All right. So again, this is a policy that just has us consider. We just
That's
consider.
correct.
No blankets, nothing, just a consideration. Caroline, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. My understanding when we had the lawyer here is that we could, well, I'll just ask instead. Do we need a policy, or can we release one specific advice without writing a policy?
Councillor Clark, we're not discussing the policy, just the motion for reconsideration at this time, okay? Thank you.
All right, any other comments? Bruce?
Yeah, I'd like to thank those who organized to get this back for reconsideration and clarify. I look forward to further discussion of it. I'm not uncomfortable with the idea, but I had a couple of suggestions, and that's where my concern was on the first round. But I look forward to discussing it yet again.
All right, David Goodman, you got your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So today was the first time that I heard that there had been a discussion of process. I assumed that that was done then in a closed session. So my initial question is, why is a discussion of a process being done in a closed session as opposed to an open session?
So,
Your
let me
worship,
first
the
an-
debate is only on reconsideration at this point.
Fair enough, but I will answer his question in that I was actually alluding to when we had the lawyer available in public discussion. So that's what I was alluding to. And I got the motion obviously is attached to something else outside of what I was alluding to, but I hope that provides some perspective. What happens in closed stays in closed, David.
Okay, so you're reconsidering something, and you made some, you did speak to it, so, but in some vague manner, I think. What is now the process that you're going to be reconsidering?
We're going to vote on it, and if it passes, you'll know all about it for the next meeting, and if it doesn't, then you won't know much about it.
Okay.
Deborah Struck.
It's actually Peter Struck here.
Peter, go ahead.
So one of my questions is this letter of opinion regarding road end sales, which I and others would really like to see.
Hey, Peter, maybe you can hold this one because we're still talking about the motion for reconsideration. So it's not about anything specifically. It's just about whether or not there might be a policy that would allow us, require us to review each different opinion. That's all.
Okay, well, I have a different question then.
Yeah, can you hold that then? Because we're gonna finish up with this motion for reconsideration that's already been seconded.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments on this? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Lisa, do you want your vote recorded?
It will be recorded, Your Worship.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so if we go to public question period, Peter, you were kind of cut off there. I apologize. Why don't you start off?
Well, one of the questions I have is, have there been more than one opinion regarding lawyers' opinions during the last 10 or 20 years that have happened regarding selling road ends, or is it just one that we're talking about that myself and others are hoping to be able to see?
Your Worship, that information is not available yet. The policy has to be reviewed first.
Okay, I have a different question. I'll have to research it a bit more, but I have had some dealings with some other municipalities, and I was told by some expert people that municipalities, et cetera, in BC are not allowed to rule by policy. That if you're going to have any kind of running your show there, you need to have a bylaw for it, and that running by policy is not an appropriate way to run a municipality. Does anybody know anything about that subject?
Lorna, I was using policy and bylaw interchangeably. Do you have can you comment?
There are two different things that we're talking about here. We have bylaws for everything that we need bylaws for, but you still have to work with policies throughout. Procedures and policies always apply to different things, so it's a difficult comparison to make.
Okay, thank you. Jim Chisholm. Jim?
Hello, here I am.
Sherry.
Yes, I would like to ask a couple of questions, and the first one is about how's the status of our streetlights?
Lorna?
I believe Stuart Novak could answer that, Your Worship.
Stuart?
Hi. So we are moving forward with it intermittently, just because of the time frame, being stretched out for all the other priorities that we have. But I did open up an account through BC Hydro, which was needed, and I just got that opened up, and we received billing for some work related to the installation. So there was some extra wiring that had to be done. Once we pay the bill, then they will start moving forward on it. So we just got the bill today, as a matter of fact, and then we'll pay that, and then they should be moving forward promptly, hopefully.
So do you think like within the next couple of weeks?
Probably within the next month or so. Mhm.
Okay, and my next question is about road end sales. Where are we at on that?
I am hoping, Your Worship, to have a report on the next council agenda.
Do we have the surveys are done or the appraisals done?
That is what is being worked on and finalized for the next council agenda.
So I'm just a little puzzled here. How long are the appraisals taking? A couple of months or what?
Everything is taking a little bit longer than anticipated due to the COVID situation, because all businesses are working under different types of constraints.
Well, that's unfortunate because these road end sales, Neil, are really, if we need money, let's get it. And things just are not moving along fast enough.
I sense the urgency. What's great is next meeting, as Lorna said, we'll have the information necessary to be able to.
Well, that's what I was told at the last meeting. So how many more next meetings am I going to hear?
I can speak on behalf of staff when I say that they are inundated. And the prioritization, not over road ends, but as a prioritization for the OCP amendment review for the docks, we don't have the staff that other municipalities have to just generate reports on a weekly basis.
Well, I don't know. It just seems like nothing is moving forward, Neil. It just seems like, I don't know who's listing out the priorities, but nothing's moving forward. Nothing simple, nothing difficult. So, and do we not need some kind of a motion to change the OCP in order to sell the road ends? I thought we could do that with one of the councillors making a motion to make a small amendment.
No,
because that hasn't been done either.
Remember, the OCP review was supposed to be already underway in COVID.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the whole review.
No, but I'm saying that was supposed to be underway already. And so we're having to deal with the fact that we weren't able to have an election and have the committee put together for the OCP proper.
Yes, but in order to sell road ends, we don't need to have the whole committee. All we need is a councillor to make a motion.
We still need to know what we're actually deciding on. So we need to know costs, we need to know legal risks, we need to know timelines, and we need to know benefit. And that's what Lorna and staff are working on. I understand I sense the urgency, Sherry.
Yeah.
We're hopefully no more than 2 weeks away from being able to have some solid guidance in this regard. And you have to accept the fact that the service providers in all industries are slower now because of COVID. You'll notice it's not the only instance. As an example, TELUS, who's offering to install a bunch of TELUS fiber. I believe they can only go into a house for 10 minutes at a time, and that's after relaxation of the rules that have been going for the last 2 months. So it's not just staff who are holding things up. We're doing our best.
Well, I guess I'm being stubborn in saying that your best isn't good enough for me. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Noted. John Shulistani.
Thank you. I have a question regarding item number 8.2, a letter from Abigail Cameron for Local Immigration Partnership Manager at Success.
You can go ahead with your question.
Thank you. There was a question asked from the village, and the question is, will the village of Belcarra endorse the attached statement regarding systemic discrimination and racism, which is a growing concern across Canada?
We've already voted to endorse this. We did it back when 8.2 was part of the correspondence, and we discussed it.
Thank you. So it is voted.
Yes, it would be preferable if you were able to attend the whole meeting so we didn't have to look back on a number of the decisions that we've already made. It has been approved.
Thank you. I have another question now. We requested from the village to specify what is the current zoning of the foreshore fronting our property as 3762, and we haven't received a response back yet. It's now 2 weeks past, and according to bylaw 510, it's either Marine Zone 1 or Marine Zone 2. I wondered which one is it? Why is it difficult for the village to respond to us?
Lorna, is this part of litigation, or can we talk about this?
We can talk about that. That's just village property that's part of the highway encroachment.
So, John, you already had that answer.
So is it W1 then?
Lorna, are you familiar with the different designations? It's just village property, John. If you'd like to take this offline to propose why you need any more specificity, we can do this offline without holding everybody else up.
Okay, my question is that I'm surprised that Lorna doesn't know, because we spent about $250,000 to $500,000 last year updating 510, and we still don't know what the foreshore is fronting our property. Is it zone 1 or zone 2? Why is it so difficult to answer?
Your point's taken, and I already responded that if you'd like, you can write in what your concern is about either. But again, it's village property, and the areas of expertise on things that we don't have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, especially village property designations anywhere in the village. It's okay if they're not top of mind.
So should we expect to receive an answer from the village whether our foreshore is zone 1 or zone 2?
Yes, in time.
How much time does the village need to take to respond whether the foreshore fronting our property is zone 1 or zone 2?
The prioritization of the OSP amendment to allow for dock applications is more important than your question.
So currently, village does not know each property's zoning?
This has been asked and answered, my friend. I'm sorry, I'm going to move on. Don Babineau.
Good evening. I got 2 points, if I could.
Please.
First one, this is brand new, pressure washing. It shows up on the Facebook site from time to time. I'm just wondering if we as a community, I mean, we all live here because the beauty and the peacefulness of it, but pressure washing, including my darn pressure washer as well, it seems that is there any way that we could come together as a village and dedicate the month of May or a 2-week period sometime when we all get our pressure washing done at once, as opposed to it dragging on for literally months? Is that a possibility that we could rally behind something like that?
We get letters requesting special weeks for special days of celebration. A monthly celebration of pressure washing is new to my experience.
Yes.
It would require obviously enforcement for people who pressure washed outside of that month, regardless of the urgency of their pressure washing. Have you thought what kind of penalties you'd like to have for people who are required to pressure wash outside of your celebratory month?
A public shaming of sorts.
Pressure wash the people themselves?
Yes. Something like that would be, I just think it's probably doable if we just coordinate ourselves. That's all. We're a small village. We could probably do something like that and make it less annoying for people throughout the many months that it goes on for.
Point taken, and it's on people's radar now. Don't forget, there's a community bulletin board, there's the Facebook board, there's walking down the street and doing whatever level of shaming you feel is necessary, but it's on people's radar now.
Yeah, that's not my style. I think that if we could, have a discussion about it and everybody kind of says, yeah, the month of May would be great. Yeah, we can. That gives us enough time to do it. And then we put something in place that allows that to happen.
I hear the sentiment. And just remember, there are requirements for pressure washing outside of just seasonality. And if someone can't get their house painted, for example, because it's too rainy in May, and they need to have a pressure wash before they can paint it in June or July, we got to find ways to be able to manage all that. I'll put it on your radar for continued thought. You had a second question.
I did. We've had 2 major committees that have been put together. One is the water, one is the revenue generation. And I would like to see those items that were deemed to be actionable items, I would like to see those as being an ongoing update provided in this meeting weekly, so that Sherry, and I support Sherry for bringing up the road end sales, because that's a major initiative, just using that as an example. But she's had to ask in the last two meetings, what's the updates on road end sales? I don't think it's up to Sherry or any other resident to have to ask for an update on a major initiative. I think this is something that council should be updating us on and saying, hey, this is where we're at. And I think that's a failing of your process right now.
Noted. The assumption is that all progress is reported, and as Lorna said, she expects to report some in 2 weeks. So if nothing's being reported, no progress has been made. And if that's not clear enough, if progress hasn't been made between meetings because it isn't being reported on, we can touch on it each time and say there's nothing to report for progress being made, and if that makes it, it helps to clear the air.
Okay, again, on this, Sherry asked the question 2 weeks ago about road end sales. And I remember the answer, and the answer was that we're expecting the survey reports to be in by the following week. Well, 2 weeks have expired, and again, Sherry had to ask, what's going on with road ends? And an update was provided in the previous meeting that we were expecting the survey report in already. So now 2 weeks has gone by, and Sherry's had to ask the question again. That's not right. You guys should be providing updates on what's going on, and it should be recorded as such, so that that answer saying that the survey reports were going to be in the Tuesday following, then we would have, and then you guys would be able to report on what's happened or what didn't happen. I just don't think it's incumbent upon the residents to ask questions about major initiatives. You guys should be reporting back to us as to what's going on.
Noted. Thank you. Bruce, you've got your hand up, but it's not electronically. Are you?
Yeah, my apologies. Yeah, I wanted to respond to Don if I could.
Sure.
Yeah, two items. First, and although it's a bit out of the blue, the issue of pressure washing, I think, is a valid one. It reminds me a little of years ago when we used to allow burning in the village, and people did clean up in the spring. And fortunately, today we have other ways of disposing of that organic material. But it used to be burned, and typically the burning would take place the day after or the day I was painting my deck. So it seemed at the time to be a relatively minor or trivial issue, but I think it's not. In fact, if we could consider it, I'm not suggesting we do it now, but I would certainly be receptive to the idea that we should encourage people to try to put windows around that, because we did exactly that with respect to burning prior to it being completely banned, and it was reasonably successful. So, end of my comment there. Secondly, he does raise an issue I'd like to flag with respect to one of the two committees he named, which was the Water Committee. And as I mentioned in the previous meeting, we are held up to an extent because of the challenge of getting Zoom capabilities for meetings, because we want these to be in the public to be able to come in for them, and to have them recorded properly as committees of council. And so just a note that, well, we hope to have a bit of a workaround within the next few weeks, so there may be some recommendations coming to council soon. We are certainly, those people that are working on the committee are certainly giving thought to it, and I appreciate that. But like some of these other issues, we're held up in terms of our capacity to support that at the moment within the village. And I'm hoping as soon as we do get some spare resources, we can schedule some Zoom meetings. So thank you for raising it, Don.
Don, would you like to respond to Bruce, or do you have something else with your hand up? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Bruce, thank you. I do remember the burning, and that's a great example. If it's possible, as opposed to just kind of noting the pressure washing, that we could, what's the protocol? Do I put in a notice of motion that I'd like to have a 4-week, a 6-week period? not a 3-month period for pressure washing, because it's a darn noisy thing that goes on within our bays. So is that the way to handle it, a notice of motion? And because I'd like to see a bylaw put in place.
Your worship, a resident cannot put in a notice of motion.
And you're missing a crucial area about having to become a candidate for the next election, and then go through all the pain and suffering of being on council in order to be able to put a notice of motion in. The luxury of that pain and suffering, my friend, requires planning.
So
Staff could look into this, your worship, and bring back a report.
Sure. Can I recommend though that
2
this
weeks.
report, Don, as much as I know you'd love to have it taken care of, this is not a report that supersedes priority over a number of our other things that we're also getting challenged on.
I get that totally. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks. All right, David Shulistani, go ahead.
Hi, I have a question. As I guess almost all of the residents in Belterra have noticed, there's been almost an exponential increase in the volume of traffic, especially on Marine Avenue and whatnot, from both non-residents of Marine Avenue and also even non-residents of Belterra. And another thing was also on Facebook, as you saw yesterday, there was a T-boning accident on Sunnyside, and I believe it was Bedwell Bay intersection, and today a vehicle that drove off into the ditch. I have noticed a lot of really risky, very unsafe, noisy, more or less interactions with people that neither display Belterra decal or just parking very close to the cliff edge. And also another case being using the residences' driveways as turnaround points.
David, would you mind getting to the question part?
Yes, my question is, can we restrict, similar to almost everywhere else in Belterra, can we restrict parking along Marine Avenue to be it Belterra permit holding only?
David, the last meeting in which I believe you attended, we passed a bylaw that we again voted on to ensure that it was resident-only parking throughout the entire village.
Yes,
So
but can we place a sign? That's what I'm trying to get at. Is can we place signage?
As we discussed in the last meeting, it takes time. The signs have been ordered. They've started to be arrived. They've already started being placed, I think, in some of the areas. So
Yes, they have.
This is already well underway and has been communicated already, David, in its entirety.
Yes, the only reason why I'm raising this concern again is because of the 2 incidents that has happened in 2 consecutive days.
On Sunnyside Road. On Sunnyside Road in Port Moody and the base of Anmore.
Yeah, but and I witnessed one car, more or less, you know how you hydroplane, trying to get traction, almost falling in a ditch in front of my property.
I hear you. If you have concerns about illegal parking and the bylaw officer is there, you can always text her. You can also call the RCMP non-emergency line, and you can call Coquitlam Towing. All the numbers are posted on the website.
So any vehicle that is parked on Belterra streets
illegally,
any
vehicle parked illegally on any street in Belterra.
Okay, so anything without a decal can be removed. That's correct, right?
Well,
when the signs are up, the signs are not out.
But that's what I'm saying, though, right? When you guys pass them, you're waiting for the signage. However, you're telling me that has been passed. So why can't we not tow vehicles that are parked illegally without decal parking if you're telling me that has been passed?
It's passed. It takes time to put all the signage all around the village, as we've already said. So if it hasn't gotten in front of your house yet, it's just a matter of time. But if someone is parked illegally, for example, in the middle of the road, blocking traffic, facing the wrong way, if they're driving too fast, you can call any of the 3 numbers that I've already alluded to.
Okay, thank you.
John Shulistani, go ahead, please.
Thank you. My question is, why Belterra forces new residences to connect to water, whereas leaving those who are already a resident not connected to water?
I can't believe that I'm saying this again. It's only been 20 minutes. The bylaw, when water was put in, was put in place saying no one would have to connect, And then it was modified to say that new residents, after a house was sold and then it was purchased, they would have to connect, and that bylaw was passed. It's been in place now for, Lorna, how many years?
6 or 7, I think, Your Worship, I believe.
So that's the history again.
Thank you. But my question was the reason. Yes, your worship explained that.
You'd have to go back to the minutes from the council meetings at that time.
So at this point, the council does not know, or Lorna doesn't know why that.
5 or 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago when it passed, to Lorna's point, the minutes are available, but the sentiment obviously was that people needed to be hooked, more houses needed to be hooked up. Bruce, do you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Yeah, and again, even for me, 5, 6 years is a while, some time ago. At the time the water system was being put in, there were mixed views on it, as there are with virtually every initiative that a council takes. And there were a lot of people in the village who had very, very strong attachment to their existing water source. And we heard from them again and again and again. And basically, while the views differed, a lot of them were very eager to maintain the wells that they had. And at the same time, council faced the challenge that when it installed a water system, the fewer homes that were connected to it, the less flow we would have. And the less flow we had, the greater the risk that our chlorination levels would fall below the safety level. And once you fell below the safety level, then we would have to install rechlorination capabilities within the village. And we hoped to avoid that. I would add that virtually every case that I was aware of that was checked by staff at that time, municipalities that provided domestic water required everyone to join. That is, 100% of the homes had to join. That was the standard practice. Given the degree of attachment people had to their existing wells in the village, we opted to allow those who had wells on their own property that were safe or deemed to be safe to continue to use those. And then, and on that basis, with that understanding, the question of whether we should proceed to seek the grant, the funding that would allow us to go ahead with the water system passed, but it did not pass overwhelmingly. I'm sorry, I'm working by memory, but I think it was in the 70% range in favor, but that tells you, 1/3 of residents did not want the water system to come in. And when it did come in and the connections were made, obviously the numbers were small to start with. And the question was, which was unique to Belcarra, was at what rate would we begin to reduce the number of unconnected homes and add homes? A couple of years into that process, a motion was brought forward that we require the two things that Neil cited. One, that new homeowners, because those new homeowners were not promised they could continue to use their wells, that they would be required to connect within a reasonable period of time, number one. And number two, that major renovations would require it. Conscious of the fact that it had not been our stated policy at the time we took the vote, I was not in favor of that, but as happens on council frequently, and is one of the pleasures of being on council, you can readily be outvoted on issues. That policy was implemented. And then I think just recently, as a result of Carolina's effort, the major renovation portion of that did get modified in the last year. So still new homes and new property owners are required to connect to the municipal system, with the goal being that we gradually move up to much more comprehensive connection and therefore ensure a sufficient flow to keep the water safe.
Thank you. So my question is, without anticipating the demand, you build a large system to risk people's lives?
What? I don't think I'd put it that way, actually. I would say that we have monitored very carefully, and you can see the reports done on the municipal system, the level, and staff also have to bleed water from the system periodically to ensure that there's enough water motion so that we don't fall below the safety standards. And we do not, and I am unaware of any cases where anyone has been adversely affected by that. And just touching on the adequacy of the system, it's more than adequate to meet having every home in the portion of the village that's in the serviced area provided with potable water.
That's right.
Maybe my question is that when you were designing or planning for such a system, when the majority of Belcarra residents did not require or did not demand municipal water, why the village went ahead to bring a water system when majority would like to keep their water?
No, the majority wanted the water.
Yes.
So what is the percentage of homes currently connected?
Oh,
I don't know, but it's in the neighborhood. It's now, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I believe it's 67% connected.
Yeah, I was going to say around 70, but that's, I'm sure that's correct.
Okay, we're going to move on now, John. Jim Chisholm, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay, one thing that for Babin knows and he's concerned about noisy power washers, well, he can ask his friends to buy electric ones. They're less than a quarter of the noise level. That's one easy way to do it. And of course, Bruce is correct on the fact that the water was, we do have adequate water, and it was 68%, to be sure of, Bruce.
Okay.
And approved the water.
Yeah.
Be put in.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I was very conscious at the time, that we had about a third of the village who didn't want it, and they were going to pick up an $18,000 bill by the time we were all done. But such is democracy.
Yeah, and the other thing, of course, that's happening, most of the newcomers that are coming to the village are coming from some place that do have water full time, and they're happy to hook on.
And I think we also see that in the stat that Lorna cited earlier, Jim, of the number of homes who have in fact put in sprinklers. It tells me we have a different group of owners than we would have had 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. That's all I got to say.
Quick point about that question. May I say something?
Hang on a second. No, we're going to keep going in order. Lisa Wilder's up next. Lisa, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just want to respond to John Shulistani regarding the parking. First of all, I just want to make a correction. It's not resident-only parking, it's permit parking that we have temporarily put in place throughout the village until October 31st. We're going to monitor it. The staff is doing a great job with that. It's taking time. I noticed today that the signs are starting to come up. Thank you very much for the staff for doing that. And the reason that we put that temporary measure in, it was the result mainly, one of the biggest factors was Port Moody removing all their parking along Bedwell Bay to Sunnyside on both sides, and many parks have been closed, whether fully or with restrictions due to COVID-19. Bunsen Lake was fully closed. It was restricted. Parking along Sassamat was restricted, so it's pushing people into our area. So measures had to be taken for the safety of our residents. And again, staff is diligently monitoring that, and there will be public input post all of this once the temporary measure is up after the end of summer. We've to the end of October, so that everybody can have another kick at the can, so to speak. But anyways, I want to just make it clear, it's not resident-only parking, it's permit parking. Residents have their decals for their vehicles, and we encourage you, if you don't have one for your vehicles, to get it from the village hall, call them, email them, get your permit, and get your guest passes so that when you have guests that they will be able to park in your front of your house if you don't have driveway parking for them. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Deborah Struck. Deborah? Peter?
Hi, it's Peter.
Hey, Peter?
So I just wanted to clarify one point to do with Bruce's description of the of us people who are in love with our wells. As far as I recollect, before we did the referendum to get the 68% vote, we were promised before that vote that we would forever be able to keep our wells. And it was only a couple of years after the vote came in that the village tried to undo the promise that was made to us before we voted 68%. And I wonder if anybody else recollects those fine details.
That's consistent, Peter, with what I said. And in fact, that was on that basis that I was opposed to the amendment later. The issue simply was the numbers weren't climbing at a fast enough rate. in terms of the numbers that had joined. But I frankly, I mean, I did a lot of back of the envelope calculations at the time. It seemed to me it was entirely reasonable. We would acquire it anyway for the very reason that Neil and Jim have alluded to, that, you know, new people coming in, many of them are, you know, weren't interested in having wells. So it would gradually take care of itself, but that was not the decision of council, and that's council's prerogative. But I agree with you. Yes, you would have every reason to believe you were not going to be required if you were happy with your well and it was safe and it was on your property.
Okay.
Right, Dave, sorry, go ahead, Peter. Is there something else?
No, I'm done for now. Thank you.
David Shulistani.
Yeah, one question was that I believe that Bruce just stated that at the time, if you were in love with your well, people had to pay the $18,000 fee. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Every property that would be served, it was a toll that applied to every property that would be served. And it was either
yeah, my question is, if a property had already paid the $18,000 fee, why are they, if it's not a new construction, why is it required that a new resident for a property that had already paid the $18,000 fee be required to connect?
Well, we weren't asking them to connect to get the 18,000. It was independent. You paid anyway because of the fact that it was a service area and you were included in it, so it applied to every lot.
All right, John Shulistani.
Thank you. My question is, how many residents should connect until water becomes safe?
It's safe now, and Bruce already said that.
Thank you. So we have reached the limit to be safe.
It was safe when it was first put in, and since more and more people have joined, it has required less venting of the lines to artificially move the water as it gets consumed.
Yeah, anyone who's interested in this can just have a look at the annual report. We must submit one, courtesy of the people in Walkerton. And there is a very thorough report and result of all the testing that we've done every year that is brought to council, and it's in the public domain.
Okay, thank you. So requiring more people to connect is not because of safety. That's what my concern.
It was a factor in the original decision.
So it's no longer in effect.
No, I don't agree with that. We've never had an unsafe result. I mean, look, you get the odd test that doesn't qualify, but the vast pattern is consistent. Qualified people review it, and we have not been told to take any extraordinary steps thus far.
Rob Begg.
It just has changed the subject as a point of clarification. My understanding is that a policy is an aspiration. A bylaw is enforceable. Villages run on bylaws. We set policies to lay out our aspirations on what we hope to achieve or a direction that we want to go. If that provides any kind of clarity, is the way it was explained to myself.
And then normally what comes after that is, but hope is not a plan.
Correct.
All right, I don't see any other hands. Desmond, I think you've got your hand up physically. That's very retro.
How do I do it?
It's okay, we got you now, but for the future, just click on the participant button at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, okay.
A white box will pop up, and then you'll see a way to raise your hand there. So why don't you go ahead, please, Desmond?
Thank you.
What's your last name, Desmond? Sorry, Desmond, what's your last name?
Wilson.
Desmond Wilson, thank you.
I was wondering what the possibility is of revisiting the reduction in roadside chipping that we've had for the last year or so. We used to have it occur twice a year, and we were able to have up to 2 piles of debris at each home. And it seems to me when we're talking about mitigation of forest fires, that's one valuable thing that we can contribute towards the safety of the village. And I don't mind paying for the second run.
It's a great point. It was debated to the exact point that you just made, and remove both of theirs. We wanted Belcarra to continue to fund one for safety, and I believe we were talking about the second one being resident fee based, a second one as well. Lorna, have we got a plan for the second resident fee based one at this point?
No, we don't, Your Worship, but we could probably work on something for the fall. But it would have to. But council only approved one chipping in the budget, so it would have to be charged back to residents. I don't know how we would have to determine how many we would need to make it cost effective.
Remember in the old days, we used to have to pay for the actual chipping passes in advance. Perhaps that might be something we could revisit.
But we do have other opportunities now because chipping can be put year round into the organic bin, and they can take small amounts up there all the time also.
Well, I think the problem, Lorna, is that invariably now the organic bins are filled to the limit because for obvious reasons you can't do it any other way as you used to be able to. And the size is 3 by 3 by 10 feet. So, I mean, it wouldn't take too much of that to fill the bin from 2 or 3 people.
It's a good point, and thanks for putting it back on the radar. It's funny because I only found this that I bought like, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I've been hanging on to it ever since, hoping I get free chipping or prepaid chipping when it comes up again. So I've never lost the fact that the resident shipping is an investment that I made as well, that just haven't delivered on that one. But it's a good point, Desmond.
Thank you.
No worries. Deborah or Peter.
Hi, it's Peter again. I just wanted to verify what Rob Bake had to say about policy being an aspiration. So I'm hoping that staff and council will keep that in mind, because it seems so often that policies are being put onto us residents as if they are a bylaw and an enforceable item. And according to what Rob Bake said, they aren't. They're only an aspiration.
We should have a policy that we don't enforce any policies as bylaws.
Good idea.
I'm in. If and a little bit more seriously, if there is anything that appears to be being enforced as a bylaw that isn't a bylaw, obviously that's not appropriate. So please bring it to attention of staff. Seeing no other hands. Oh, we got another hand, a couple hands. John Shulistani.
Thank you. Is bylaw 411 still enforceable?
An active bylaw is always enforceable.
So bylaw 411 is enforceable. Thank you.
Deborah Struck. Or Peter.
Hi, it's Peter. So I'm going to bring up a new topic, and my topic is to do with having a future revenue stream to help deal with our financial weakness in Belcarra, and also to provide diversity of housing. And so I'm curious to the elected officials, all 5 of you, whether I have enough support to bother going forward with this. And it's to do with forming a group, not a committee. I would possibly be the one who would do this. I'd find some like-minded individuals and look for an appropriate site within Belcarra to build a high-rise building to produce tax revenue and diversity of housing. And I'm curious as to whether I have enough support from elected officials to even bother studying this topic.
Why don't we go around the table? Rob, you got your hand up first. Go ahead.
Might as well. I'm all in favor of looking at any ongoing revenue streams. And I think it's pretty apparent when you look at the DCCs that other municipalities are actually collecting to do with whatever kind of high-rise tower or whatever you'd like to call it. I think there's some major opportunities, and I think really we should look at areas that basically would not affect any existing owners, and backed up against a hillside. I think we've had this discussion years ago. The premise for this for myself, Peter, just so you know, is it doesn't matter how many road ends we have, they're finite, and eventually they will run out if that's your only source of income. And I think it's very appropriate and forward-looking to look at other options at this point. I also like your idea of it being a group where we wouldn't tie up a pile of staff time at this point with COVID, just simply to brainstorm. I think that's a great idea. I'd be 100% behind it.
Why don't we go to Lisa next? We're just going clockwise.
Okay, it's counterclockwise for me, but that's okay. I was on mute.
Sorry, I was writing all my little notes, and Rob Begg has some very good points there. Thank you, Councillor Begg. I'd like to sit down with you, Peter, and discuss it further. I think there should be some opportunities. We've talked about this before, especially with having possibilities of senior housing above the village hall. I don't like the idea of a high rise myself. I don't think that's a flavor of this kind of a village. Low rise housing or senior housing, moderate housing, whatever. But I think Councillor Begg makes some really good points that it's road ends are finite, and you know, we have to look at we have very few opportunities, I think, in Belcarra, being the kind of village that we are, to explore this kind of revenue generation that we need. And whether it's sale of road ends, whether it's housing, subdivision, whatever it happens to be, but it's I think a committee is a great idea. Thank you.
Bruce, you're next on my screen.
I agree with Rob and Lisa.
No, all right. Carolina?
Yeah, I somewhat agree with Rob and Lisa. If we were to see dedicated to perhaps some affordable housing, but also to age in place, I would not be in favor of 30 stories high rise. That's not something I would be in favor for. I know a lot of people moved here to get away from the city and to get away from so much densification. But obviously, I would be willing to discuss whatever it is that's on the table. I wouldn't stop the discussion, put it that way. But no, I would not support a high rise that is, you know, just low rises and for a specific use. Thank you.
All right, Peter, I'll go last. Not that I expect us to build a Burj Khalifa here, but I'm actually comfortable with whatever democracy rules. This is the residents of Belcarra who should be making decisions about what we should be doing. And so when the vote comes to something as contentious as that, I'm going to just sit back and watch what the majority brings forward. I wouldn't say that as readily and not have an opinion if we didn't already have a financial plan now that we'd be debt free in 2023, barring anything unexpected. So while we have enormous debt now, we have ongoing concerns, to Rob's point, and we should be taking a look at novel ways to be able to satisfy those financial responsibilities going forward. But I think this is the kind of thing that we as council should really carefully listen to residents and ensure that it's residents that vote to change the sense of what Belcarra is, and not just council. Bruce, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond in a way to Carolina's comments. Rob, I think, had cited the issue of finding a suitable, looking for sites that don't have a major impact on others. And I do say, I would say that most municipalities do try to find a way to offer a diversity of offerings. And as long as we can place them properly, I think it could be very desirable. It would be nice to have, because again, if we're considering, as we often have talked about in the past, aging in place options, people may want to downsize, but stay within the village. So that would suggest, a different type of housing than what we have now. So I would certainly welcome it. Thank you.
Don Babineau.
I'd just like to say I support what Peter has put forward. And Bruce just took the words out of my mouth. I remember that as part of the election, leading up to the election, and some of the comments made around the election was taking the existing location of where our village hall is, which wouldn't encumber anybody, and putting an 8-story or 9-story building there that with the town hall on the bottom and with residents on the top. I thought that was a stellar idea. And it wouldn't impact anybody. And to Bruce's point about aging in place, and to our village needs in terms of ongoing revenue streams. So, Peter, good on you for bringing that up. And I think it has merit. I think we shouldn't be thinking only of road ends. We should be looking at other solutions to bring additional revenue, ongoing revenue, to our village.
All right. Seeing nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn? Everybody's on mute.
I'll put 'em up.
I'll move. So moved.
Lisa
Second.
moved, second by Carolina. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carried. All right, thank you to staff and everybody for joining us today. And we will wish everybody well. See you in 2 weeks. And everybody stay healthy.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks.
Good
Hey,
night.
you guys. Sorry I was late coming on. I couldn't. All of a sudden my internet went on. I couldn't get it back. I finally did do what you suggested and did it on my hotspot here. So sorry I was late. I've been having internet connection or internet problems.
Sure.
Hi. I did. Okay. Oh, you monkey. Anyways, I'm leaving now. Thank you very much for understanding that. All right. Bye-bye.